Hello, and welcome back. It's still Shrektober, week number 2. We're talking about Shrek number 2. That's me. It's me, Thomas, and it's me and Jake. We're talking about Shrektober all month long, baby. Movies. This is our podcast. Al Pacino's prison scene.
So tell me what's the problem, baby? I don't know the actual lyrics. I know "Accidentally in Love," but that's it.
Shrektober.
All month long.
I don't know what you just did.
I was doing the "Accidentally in Love" because last time I did All Star.
Oh, is that the movie? Is that the song that plays during their honeymoon?
Thomas, you're supposed to be music man.
Oh,
here.
look! I wrote down all the songs. All right.
As did I.
I did not. I don't remember whatever you just did.
Accidentally in love. I'm in love.
See, I don't know. So the songs in this movie are equally work with the script.
Are you gonna start the podcast?
Yeah, but I'm going off what you said.
Well, we're not there yet.
Well,
start
I'm
the
gonna keep
podcast.
talking
Okay.
about that. The songs in this movie are like on the same par as the first movie, I would say, as far as like plot goes. But for some reason, they're just not as memorable. Except for the one scene.
Ooh, Thomas, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you there.
In the first movie,
time.
See, I didn't remember that was in this.
Oh, Thomas.
But the first movie, like every song, like I think of that song, or I hear that song and I think of Shrek, like All Star, Hallelujah, I'm a Believer, and the other ones. If I heard them, I'm like, hey, that's that scene in Shrek. But the ones in this movie, not so. But we can talk more about that later. Let's go into a recap. So this is Shrek Dos for all you Spanish-speaking peoples, which you probably like the last song because its title is in Spanish. But anyways, the movie starts with a storybook opening, not dissimilar from the first movie. However, it's not the same book. If you look at the two openings, one after another,
it's not the same. It's not the same person either.
No, it's not. It is this time. It is Prince Charming, and I think that has something to do with it not being the same book. But again, we'll get into that later. And it opens with him reading the book, and he's like, "Ha! Prince Charming is so beautiful." And then he goes to the castle, and the wolf is like, "What?" And Prince Charming's like, "You're not Fiona." And then the wolf's
and
like,
he's reading
he's reading
a lewd magazine,
Pork Illustrated. And then he's like, "Well, yeah, she's on her honeymoon." And then it cuts to the scene that Jake sang to of Shrek and Fiona on their honeymoon. And then shortly after that, they go back to the swamp, and then these people come playing trumpets, and one of them plays the Hawaii Five-0 theme for some reason. And they're like, far away, decrees, and you shall come immediately. And Shrek's like, no. And Fiona's like, yes. And then, obviously, Fiona wears the pants in the relationship because they
happy wife, happy
in
life.
their onion carriage. And then Donkey's like, are we there yet? And he goes.
And then he goes, for 5 minutes! Could you not be yourself?
But then they make it to far, far away. And then everyone's like, woo, yeah, they're here. But then Shrek and Fiona get out of the carriage, and they're ugly. So everyone's like, ugh.
There's a baby crying, too.
There is. A baby cries, and like a dove gets so distracted that he flies straight into a wall and probably dies. But then King Harold is like, disgusting. Who's played by John Cleese, by the way, member of the Monty Pythons. The mom is also played by Julie Andrews, who was who's the umbrella lady? Mary Poppins.
Julia Roberts.
No.
Oh.
But yeah, so then the mom's like, yeah, whatever, it's our daughter. But the king's like, oh, disgusting. I cannot have an ogre. But then we meet the fairy godmother because there's a scene in the dining room where everyone's like, rah, 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 rah. And then Fiona goes to her room all sad and she cries. And happiness is only a teardrop away. So fairy godmother shows up and she's like, I can do all this stuff for you. And Fiona's like, no, I'm good, thanks. But then later that night, Shrek's feeling really bad because he can't sleep. And he goes and he's like reading all his letters and it's like, Prince. Oh, he reads her diary, excuse me, not letters. It's like, Miss Fiona Charming.
Mrs. Fiona Charming. Mrs. Fiona Charming.
And as you can imagine,
Fiona Charming. Mrs. Fiona Charming.
That was really disheartening for
Mrs.
Shrek.
Fiona Charming.
And it's pretty soon, like almost in that same scene, then the dad's like, hey, sorry for how I acted earlier. Do you want to go hunting with me tomorrow? And Shrek's like, yeah, okay. But what Shrek doesn't know is that before that, King Harold hired Puss in Boots to kill Shrek. So then the next morning when Shrek's out hoping to have a good old time with Fiona's daddy, um,
Zorro comes in and attacks him.
there's an assassination attempt. But he's Shrek. Everybody loves Shrek. So they just become good friends. Except Donkey. Donkey doesn't like Puss in Boots in the beginning, but that's okay. He's just jealous. So then they decide to go to the fairy godmother's place.
They don't even have dental.
They don't have dental. It's a travesty. They say they're with the union, and they get in. They're like, "Hey, godmother, can you help me out?" And she's like, "No, you're ugly." And they're like, "Okay, we'll just do it ourselves. Bye." And they steal a potion and run away and like destroy her whole factory.
May induce itching, burning, sneezing, scratching, diarrhea. The list goes on.
Just like every great medical commercial, there's a whole list of side effects that they burn through so fast that you can't even tell what they are. So Shrek and Donkey take the potion, and they wake up the next day as beautiful men. Although Shrek kind of looks like Jason Segel, in my opinion. I don't know if you know who that is
And
or
then
not.
Donkey goes like, "I'm a stallion."
Yeah, he does say that. And then they run, and they're like, "Man, Fiona, look, we're beautiful now." But they don't get to Fiona because Fairy Godmother gets in his way. And Prince Charming is like, "Haha, I'm Shrek." And Fiona's like, "No, you're not." And then King Harold's like, he's not sure if what he's doing is right. But then Shrek thinks that Fiona loves Prince Charming more than him. So then he gets all sad and goes to the Poison Apple, which is bartended by the ugly stepsister, voiced by Larry King. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
Fun little tidbit. He's also in the B movie, except in the B movie.
I knew he was in the B movie.
He plays
is
Larry King.
Yeah.
Anyways, Shrek's all sad. But then King Harold comes to the Poison Apple to meet Fairy Godmother. And she's like, "All right, so here's what we'll do. You pour this potion in her drink, and then she'll kiss my son, and then Fiona will be married and love him." But Shrek hears that, and he's like, not today. But then he gets thrown in a dungeon somehow. I don't remember exactly how that happened. Oh, they were on knights. That's right.
Yes.
They were on knights. And
I'm not wearing ladies' underwear.
police brutality! And then Shrek's good old buds, Gingy and Pinocchio and the three little pigs and the three blind mice come to save him Mission Impossible style. They break him out of the cage. And as Jake was saying, Pinocchio is wearing ladies' underwear, but he won't admit it.
And then Shrek asks, "Do you know the Muffin Man?"
And of course, Gingy knows the Muffin Man. He lives on Drury Lane.
And then the Muffin Man goes, "Oh, Gigi!"
Right, which more on that later. I've got something to say about that. Then they make Mongo, my favorite character of maybe all time.
Mongo.
He's right up there with Frank Costanza. I know that's not related to Shrek, but Frank Costanza is one of my favorite fictional characters. But anyways, Mongo's this huge, giant gingerbread man, and then they go and like storm the castle, and Mongo dies. He's basically a martyr, I think, for the cause.
Okay.
And maybe he doesn't die, but he's like laying in a river. That's where they leave him. And they break in, and then Puss jumps off the donkey, and Shrek's like, "Puss!" And then Puss is like, "Go save your lady, man."
It is time I repay my debt. That was pretty good. That
Puss
was
stays
pretty
behind.
good.
And then Donkey and Shrek go busting through. And while all this is happening, I Need a Hero is being played. Probably the best part of the whole movie. I don't think anyone...
Which, we'll talk
could
about
argue
that
with that.
later.
But, yeah, that song's going on. And then Shrek and Donkey bust in. And he's like, "Oi, don't kiss my lady." And then Charming kisses Fiona anyways. But Fiona's dad grew a conscience and didn't pour the little thing in her drink.
Well,
he did pour it, but he didn't make her drink it.
we'll talk about that.
But so she kisses Prince Charming, but then nothing happens. And then Shrek is like, "If you kiss me, then we can be beautiful forever." But Fiona's like, "I'm happy just the way we are, baby." And then Shrek tries to kiss her, but she stops him. And then they turn back into ogres. And the fairy godmother turns into a bunch of bubbles. I don't remember exactly what happens to Prince Charming. The king gets turned back into a frog because he was a frog the whole time. Freaking hypocrite.
Surprise.
And then they sing "Livin La Vida Loca," which is a Spanish song I was talking about earlier, which means living that crazy life.
All right, before we get into the rest of this episode, let's take a time to hear a word from our sponsors. Oh, sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear you over my beautiful playing of Furry Lease. My piano was perfectly tuned by More Piano Services. Oh, who is that, you ask? Why, only the finest piano tuners in the world, especially in the Birmingham, Hoover area. Oh, what else do they do? Oh, plenty of things. Oh, they do piano tuning, voicing, regulation, repair, and of course, hand restoration. Oh, where can you find them? Oh, like I said, they do work, marvelous work in the Birmingham area. Oh, how can you contact them? Oh, simply by giving them a phone call, of course. Oh, the phone number? Here, I'll give it to you. It is 205-810-0012. Yes, that's more piano services at 205-810-0012. Now, back to the piano and the podcast.
So, this movie. After we finished last week's episode, Shrek, which if you haven't listened to, go check it out because...
Why wouldn't you have listened to that episode already yet, though? I mean, what are you doing?
Yes, but if you haven't, go check it out because there's some things in there that I think you didn't know Shrek was about. But after we finished that episode, I was thinking the next day that the 4 movies, the Shrek quadrilogy, I think each movie
Quadrilogy, I like that.
A different step in the adult life. So the first movie is like we kind of mentioned this in the episode, but we didn't actually mention it. How we said it's for like the big kids who are grown up and aren't grown up yet. So like Shrek is in like that bachelor stage.
That college dorm life.
Right. In the first movie where he's like, man, I don't need anybody. All I need is myself and my swamp. But over the course of the movie, he learns about love and he gets married and he gets a best friend. So now he's got all these people in his life. So that movie was about that part of your life. But now this movie, Shrek is married. So it's time to take that next step and he has to meet the parents.
This movie is definitely about, plot-wise, Shrek's domestication. Now, as far as what it means, well, Thomas, I think that Shrek 2 is about corporate propaganda.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
Maybe not propaganda, but like corporate, what's the word? Like mass advertising, I guess. Trying to
better out than in, I always say. Continue.
I'll add to that. But like basically doing whatever you can to get that money.
Right, and of course, I'm assuming you're talking about Fairy Godmother.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. But also like Harold and like the role his character plays in it.
I think Harold's misunderstood.
Why do you say that?
Well, because all right, so
I don't think I think he's exactly understood.
So, but I mean, the movie paints him as kind of a villain for most of it, but I think in his heart he's a good guy. But I wrote this down somewhere.
In your 27 pages of notes.
I said, kids have to answer for the sins of their parents. Fiona has to marry Charming because of the deal her father made with Fairy Godmother.
Yes, I agree with that.
So I don't think that Harold is a bad guy, even though initially he's very off-put by the idea of Shrek and Fiona.
Yeah.
I think it more has to do with the fact that he is being blackmailed. Maybe that might not be the right word, but something along those lines.
He's stuck in kind of this. He's stuck in this deal that he's made with the Fairy Godmother
because he as we mentioned in the recap, he was the Frog Prince, and the Fairy Godmother turned him into a human so he could be in love with Lillian, is Fiona's mom's name. So now she holds that over him and is like, "Hey, your daughter has to marry my son. That way, he will become the king."
Right.
And so everything he does in this movie is not necessarily a willing action.
This is where the idea of like corporate, I need to find a new word, a corporate like control comes. Is that basically this
a monopoly?
Yeah. Like Fairy Godmother has a monopoly over Harold, and now he has no choice but to like do what she says, or else he'll lose not necessarily his investment, but he'll lose his investment into his own life. Like everything that he has will be taken away if he doesn't follow through with what she says.
See, Harold did not watch the first movie.
He did not. Harold didn't even know Shrek existed.
No, he didn't.
So he needs to go back and watch the first movie.
He clearly doesn't know that it's all about what's on the inside. So on the outside doesn't matter. It's like we discussed in that episode, Shrek's catchphrase is better out than in. he was talking about burps. We think he was talking more about it's what on the inside.
Right.
It's more important than like what's the physical attributes. But Harold doesn't know that. He thinks I can't be a frog or she won't love me. Even though I would argue, it's not like explicitly stated, I would argue that his wife fell in love with him
When he was a frog.
Yeah.
Because she mentions at the end of the movie, isn't it?
I don't know.
Or it's somewhere in the movie she mentions like when they met. And he was a frog.
And he's like at the lily pads.
Yeah.
So
Which does that mean? She was a human though.
Yeah.
I mean, the assumption that he's the Toad Prince.
Right.
Okay.
Like the traditional fairy tale of the
Yeah.
frog prince. Yeah. I just completely lost my. So he should know that it's not all about the physical. It's about like the connection you have. Because like even when Charming is pretending to be Shrek, Fiona is still like, like this guy is not Shrek. Like this is not the guy I fell in love with.
Well, and I think Donkey makes a good note of this when they're first turned into the sexy boys.
Mm-hmm.
Is like they wake up and they're in the place, and Donkey's like, "We used to the same old ugly nasty ogre as you on the inside."
Right. Because again, it's what's on the inside that counts.
That's right.
Doesn't matter how green you are
or how sexy you are, I guess.
But the sexy guys are all the bad guys.
Sexy guys are the bad guys. Well, I don't know. Is Harold that sexy?
Who's Harold? Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I would count
Harold?
him as a villain.
Been saying it the whole time.
I think the movie like presents him as a villain, but he's not really a villain because he's not the mastermind. Like he's unwillfully having the strings pulled by the puppet master that is the fairy godmother.
That is the corporation.
Right.
Or I guess we'll call them the mafia.
Speaking of the mafia, her like little henchmen are dressed like the thumb guys in Spy Kids.
Ooh, I don't like that.
Because like they're wearing red clothes and they're bald. Which I think this came out before Spy Kids. So maybe Robert Rodriguez was inspired by Shrek too, because it's a cinematic masterpiece.
Oh my God. Okay, so we went off a little tangent there. We know what I think this movie's about. What do you think this movie's about?
All right, well, I wrote this down over here, close to the beginning. I just pointed out my notes for your listeners in case you couldn't.
Here, let me. That's notes.
There you go. Now you got it. So I wrote that number one, the first movie, was about self-acceptance. But then this movie is about the acceptance from those which we love and love us.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the movie, when the Hawaii Five-0 guy comes and they're like, you have to come the far, far away. And Shrek's like, no. He's like, no, because he's like, they won't love us. They won't understand like who we are and our love. But Fiona says, but they're my parents. They love me. And it's because she's convinced of that they go. But then we see once we get there, her parents are not accepting.
Yeah.
Initially, neither of them are. But then like almost immediately, the mom is like, well, she's our daughter, so we'll see this out. But then it takes Harold a little bit longer, as we previously discussed. So I think
I was being a bit of an ogre.
I don't know if this was conscious or not, because obviously this was made in like
2004.
Yeah, 2004.
3 years after the original Shrek.
Which every Shrek movie, including the musical, was released 3 years apart. That's a weird little
I didn't know that
tidbit. But so like that was made in that era, and now obviously things have come a long way as far as inclusion and equality. But I think that this movie's kind of advocating for
body acceptance, dude,
gay rights and transgender rights, because as Fiona says, they're my parents, they'll love me. But then initially they don't, but then they come to accept her because, as the mom says repeatedly to Harold throughout the movie, she is still our daughter, and this was her choice to marry Shrek.
Right.
So I think there's a lot to this movie about like being like, hey, even though you yourself may not understand if you love this person and like they're your daughter, your kid, or whatever, like they're still your kid. So
well, and that we talked about that in Mom and Dad.
Them.
So if you haven't watched that episode and you want to know more about how you love but you hate your family, go listen to Mom and Dad.
So yeah, I think this movie, whether people realize it or not, is like at the forefront, which it sounds weird to say because we're talking about Shrek.
Right.
but it's at the forefront of like inclusion.
I absolutely agree. So let's start from the beginning with I want to make note of the fact that you said Prince Charming opens it up. And it's the same story with a different perspective, as I think what's happening here. And then we see, like you said, him there. But the first song, it's set up the same way as Shrek 1, which sometimes is like, oh, they just use the same formula. This time I think it works great. But the song Accidentally in Love plays.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Thomas?
Well, I don't know what that says lyrically. Did you write down the lyrics?
I did not. But, I mean, the whole thing is like accidentally in love. And throughout the entire movie, you know, it's Fiona's destiny to fall in love with Prince Charming. And we see that, like, true love's kiss is Prince Charming. And even, like, Prince Charming is like, it was my destiny to marry her. And we see that in the notebook, she writes Prince Charming. So we can assume that, like, she'd always been dreaming of this.
See, okay, so I have a few things to say. Number one, as far as the song go, I think most of the songs in this movie have to do with being in love or questioning that love. Like later, there's a song called "Ever Fallen in Love," and there's lyrics. It says something like, "Do you ever feel like you've fallen in love with someone you weren't supposed to be in love with?" And that song plays after Shrek thinks that Fiona has left him for Prince Charming. So this movie, I think, moving from the first movie, which as I discussed in the credits of that film, all the songs were about like how happy they are because they're in love and they're on the honeymoon and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is like that second stage after you get married, and we don't know exactly how long it's been. Presumably not very long if they were at their honeymoon in the beginning. But after you get married, obviously I've never been married. I'm like 20 years old, but actually some people my age are getting married, so they might get offended by me saying that. But anyways, I've never been married, but it would seem to me, it makes sense logically that after you've been married for a couple of years, you would begin to think like, maybe like, why did I do this?
Yeah, I think there's definitely those questioning thoughts, which I actually made note of. I think the song talks about like, essentially, who cares what comes next? I'm in love right now, and I want to be in love right now. So I think that ties into what you're saying about like,
yeah,
4 years down the road, did I make the right choice here?
So I think even though this movie takes place over a very compact period of time, especially picking up almost immediately after the first movie left off.
Oh, it's 2 days maybe.
Well, actually,
if we're counting the bulk of the movie.
All right, hold on. So I'm derailing our conversation a little bit. At the end of this movie, Dragon flies in with a bunch of babies.
What?
So at the end of this movie, it's like into the credits.
Oh, okay.
Dragon flies in with a bunch of babies and like donkey's babies. So I'm not well educated on dragon pregnancies.
Well, Donkey makes note of this at the beginning of the film.
That she's sick.
That she's been moody.
Right. But what I'm saying is important for this conversation is timeline-wise, human pregnancies last about 9 months.
Right.
I don't know about dragon pregnancies, but presumably if that was the same timeline, then this movie would have to be at least 9 months after the first movie.
At least. Okay, yeah.
But their honeymoon is also like a montage, so there could be like lapses there.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe it's closer to a year. Maybe it's like Jake said, 2 days. But nevertheless, they are not very far into their marriage at this point. I think that's safe to say.
Right.
But I think what I was saying was, even though this movie takes place over a short period of time, it still goes through kind of that second stage of adult life of, you're married. So it's like, well, now what? And
yeah.
Shrek isn't sure if Fiona loves him. Fiona is sure that she loves him, but her parents aren't accepting of it. So there's a lot going on, and everyone's basically questioning, except for Fairy Godmother and Prince Charming, everyone's questioning like if what they're doing is right. And I think that's even seen with the side characters, like Puss in Boots is originally hired to kill Shrek, but then he ends up being one of the bros.
Yeah, that continues throughout the movies.
Which I think Puss in Boots might be my favorite of like their squad.
Him, yeah. Antonio Banderas. Hey,
and it's honestly,
for you, baby, I could be.
Honestly, after watching this, it's hard to imagine the first movie without him. Just because, like, he's one of the bros, man. I can't imagine it without him.
Let's move on. The next, I want to make note that in the opening montage, we see the moon scene again, which happens in the first one.
Are you talking about when like they're looking at the moon?
Mm-hmm.
And Donkey's like, "What's that? What's that big one up there? Is that the donkey?" And Shrek's like, "No, that's the moon."
But I feel like the moon, this shot of the moon, symbolically represents like Shrek opening up. Because in Shrek 1, he talks about like how no one
he's
likes him.
misunderstood.
Right. And then in this one, we see Shrek like accepting Fiona's love. All right. And then yeah, far, far away people come. Far, far away. Definitely Hollywood. I mean, I think we can agree on that.
Well,
right?
and there's a when they get too far away. First of all, this song "Funky Town" plays,
which the first, I think one of the first lyrics of that is, where did I put it? Hold on. A town that's right for me, where everybody wants to go.
Well, see, I was thinking like "Funky Town." You said that lyric. I didn't look up the lyrics or know any of the lyrics of the song that other than "Won't You Take Me to Funky Town."
Won't you
But
take me to?
Those two words would seem to suggest it's somewhere you don't want to go, which I think is fitting for Shrek, especially
Funky Town?
in that moment. Yeah, like if something's funky, if
I want to
something's-
go to Funky
something
Town.
smells funky, you don't want to be around there.
Yeah, but if the club is funky,
Then people need to wash their socks.
oh, okay.
But I was gonna say once they're there, Donkey says something along the lines. I wrote it down. It's something about movie stars. So I wrote down the question of, are the princesses in this universe? Because you said it's basically Hollywood. I guess it could be just argued that they're celebrities.
Yeah.
But Donkey calls them movie stars. So is this kind of like, I don't know if any.
Yeah, but see, Donkey has this weird thing where he meshes diegetic with non-diegetic, and we see that through and we especially can see that through like his musical inclination.
Like how he's just singing all the time.
Yeah, where he takes. I mean, I think music is a prominent, point of all these movies, and I think Donkey is the character that ties in the fantasy with reality. So, because he also mentions like other things, like he mentions movies, like you said. There's a few other things that don't exist in this world of Shrek. So I don't think we can take what he says as wholly accurate and like true to the film world.
Right. My question was gonna be, do you think like they're actual princesses, or or are they just like celebrity figures in the reality? Because
I think
it wouldn't make sense to me for them all to be in the same kingdom if they're each their own princess. And they're like behind gates, like each of them has like their own gate.
Well,
So
I
it's
mean,
more
what
like,
is a princess? Except nobility.
Usually, well, but why would they all be in far, far away?
Because that's where everybody goes. Because it's Hollywood. That's the connection there.
But also, most princesses, and I'm mainly familiar with the Disney version of these stories, so this may not be entirely accurate. Most princesses aren't like actually princesses until the end of their movie when the prince saves them.
You're right.
Except for like
so
Sleeping Beauty.
maybe they're in Hollywood looking for a prince.
That could work.
Because
like in the first movie, Farquaad's looking and they list Cinderella and Snow White.
Mm.
So arguably they wouldn't be princesses yet, or they would be married.
Right. Well, and then like at the end of this movie, they have like the red carpet.
Right.
And then we have a bunch of people coming out, yeah.
And then Tom Thumb and Thumbelina gets swept up.
Mm. And then what's her name? Joan?
The announcer lady?
Yeah.
I don't know, but she's from like a real TV announcer show.
Yeah. Okay.
Joan Rivers? Is that her name?
Oh, I think so. Okay. So yeah, far, far away. I think detached from reality, obviously, because it's far.
Better out than in, I always
say. Far away, donkey. And so I think that helps push my agenda of like saying this is a corporate propaganda movie.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I definitely think there's elements of that there. So I don't really have any additional things to say to that. So I'm going to go backtrack a little bit to what you said about the opening. We got derailed on the songs, but I wanted to mention this. It's presented as a storybook, but no one is actually flipping the pages. And
they're just flipping.
It is Prince Charming who is saying it. So I don't think this is actually him reading the book. This is him. His mom has internalized or ingrained the story into his brain over his childhood years. and it is now there so much that he can just recite it from memory.
Well, and the way that it opens is like it fades in.
Yes.
Like we go from the picture to Prince Charming writing.
Yes. So I think that this version of the storybook is a distorted reality through his own perception. And one element that I think helps that theory is that this, like in the storybook he reads, it says, until the sun went down, this is talking about after Fiona was born. It says, and everyone cheered until the sun went down, and they saw that their daughter was cursed with a frightful enchantment that took hold each and every night. Desperate, they sought the help of a fairy godmother, blah, blah, blah. So that seems to imply, at least to me, that the curse started from the moment that Fiona was born. And like that very night, she turned into an ogre.
Right.
Now, when I was a kid watching this movie growing up, because this came out in 2004, I would have been 4 years old. I always assumed that it was
that she was cursed.
Fairy godmother who turned her into an ogre.
Yeah.
So that so that Fiona would marry Prince Charming.
So that the fairy godmother would have more cards and more leverage to play in order to get that power from the king through Prince Charming's marriage with Fiona.
Yes. So I think that the story that he is telling is not true, and it's just a story that his mom has been telling him so that she can, like you're saying, eventually come into power over the kingdom.
Right.
But another thing that I think refutes this initial story is that that night when Shrek can't sleep and he's like up and looks in the diary, Fiona writes that her dad is sending her away tomorrow, and she doesn't really know why. So if she doesn't know why, then I would think that she hasn't been turning into an ogre every night. And so if that hasn't been happening yet, then Fairy Godmother would be cursing her. And this is clearly, she's at least like in our school system, she would be in like 4th or 5th grade because she is writing legibly.
Right.
Which is not the same year as you being born.
Mrs. Fiona Charming.
So I think decidedly that Fiona was not cursed as soon as she was born, and that Fairy Godmother formulated this plan to kind of get control over the kingdom using Fiona and her son.
I think okay, and I think that this only happened when Charming was born, because I think Charming is younger than Fiona. I think that's fair to say.
I can see that
because when they go to,
he gets a medieval
meal from Fat Time Po' Boy Burger. He gets a medieval meal.
Fat Time Po' Boy Burger.
And I think that subtly suggests that he's younger, which means that she wouldn't have had this plan because she wouldn't have had an heir.
Right.
But then when she had an heir, she would have this plan.
Names in this universe freaking confuse me. Because her name seems to be Fairy Godmother, but then her son's name is Prince Charming.
Shrek doesn't have a last name.
So is
it Fiona Shrek, or is it just Fiona?
It's like the Mario Bros. It's Mario, and Luigi Mario. But then you also have like Fiona writes in her textbook. I mean, her diary.
Your textbook.
Sorry, I'm a college student. Leave me alone. I took a psychology test today. I'm kind of bugging out.
Did you take one last Saturday too?
I think it was
last Sunday.
But yeah, I did take one last week. Anyway,
life is just one perpetual psychology test or philosophy test. Would you say psychology? Psychology. Life is just one psychology test. One big psychology test.
Okay, back to Shrek 2. Fiona writes in her diary, I've got a sleepover with Sleeping Beauty tomorrow. So is Sleeping Beauty her name? Or do all the kids just be like, haha, you go to sleep a lot and you're beautiful, so we're going to call you Sleeping Beauty.
Her name is Sleeping Beauty.
But like I said, they would also be in like that 4th or 5th grade
it's like a nickname.
Age range. And like, so all the other 4th and 5th graders
kids
are making
bullies.
Fun of this kid?
Kids are bullies.
I don't know, man.
I think that's her name.
You think that's her real name?
I think Sleeping Beauty is her name.
Okay, well then, and then like Fiona's name is Fiona, and then Harold and Lillian,
Shrek,
and Shrek. Donkey's name is Donkey, obviously. Puss's name is Puss, but like he's a cat, so like. Also, are talking animals like normal in this world? Because donkey talking in the first movie seemed to be like this huge deal.
Yeah, but they weren't in Far, Far Away.
I guess that's true. Maybe Farquaad just wasn't educated.
Right, and that's why he got 8.
But speaking of Farquaad, I know last week we said that Shrek 1 was a perfect movie, but I think if that movie has any shortcoming, pun intended, it is the villain Farquaad. Because I think this movie, Shrek 2, the fairy godmother is a vastly superior villain, I think, in my opinion.
I agree.
So,
I would say Farquaad is a bit flat.
and I think part of that is like, as we're saying, fairy godmother has like her fingers in everyone's
Right,
pies.
and I think there's what is Farquaad's motivation?
Get married and just be the king.
Right,
But he's also
to have
not
power,
in the
but
movie
we don't.
very much.
That's true, but we don't know anything about Farquaad. He's kind of this random dude, whereas Fairy Godmother has been around since, at least since Fiona was born.
Right. Oh no,
Probably
before
longer.
that because she helped King
Right,
Harold.
probably longer, right.
So I think part of that is, I believe we discussed this last week. It may have been off air. When Shrek, the first movie, was being produced, nobody wanted to work on it at DreamWorks. And when getting sent there, people said they were being sent to the gulag. So obviously there wasn't the passion in that one. But then Shrek was a huge success. So then everyone was like, holy crap, we got to go all out on this next one.
Right.
And I think we established last week that Shrek is a masterpiece. But Shrek 2, I think, is an even greater masterpiece.
Shrek 2 is...
It's because they had all the love.
What is beyond masterpiece?
Masterpiece times 2.
Shrek 2 is one of humanity's magnum opus.
No, going off of that.
Is that a word? Magnum opus? Plural?
Going off
opus?
of that. At the end of this movie, when King Harold gets turned into a frog, everyone thinks he died. Gingy says, he croaked.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most criminally underrated lines in all of cinema, because that's just perfect, man.
It's too soon, but yeah, it's so like.
They didn't know he was a frog.
No, well then he croaks.
Yeah,
and comes out as a frog.
So it's like the props to the writers. Whoever came up with that line, you deserve all the money in the world.
Gingy.
Okay, since you did that.
Okay, we'll go back to Gingy.
All right, so last week...
We're going to need a lot of flour.
Last week I proposed a theory that Farquaad was talking to Gingy and torturing him because he was a resistance leader. Now, I think the scene in this movie when they go to the Muffin Man is further evidence of that. Because Gingy and the Muffin Man obviously have...
Let me just say that I love that theory. I've been thinking about it since you said it last time. Because he's battle damaged. His legs were reattached,
right?
And he knows these people, and he's kind of like undercover.
So and then when they go to the Muffin Man, he's like, it's obviously that they have this working relationship.
Right.
Like the Muffin Man immediately is like, just whatever you need, Gingy, I got you, and they make Mongo.
Gingy.
But even like before that, when they're saving, when the other fairy tale creatures are saving Shrek and Puss and Donkey, it seems like Gingy's the leader. So I think Gingy is definitely a fairy tale creature resistance leader in this universe.
Dude, they're just... Yeah, I think you're right. Gingy is small business.
And I don't remember...
on my corporate team.
He's the little man trying to take down big money, big farm, whatever the,
Big pharma.
You know people.
You know what we're talking about.
But, yeah.
but also, they do Frankenstein. It's alive.
Speaking of that, there are a ton of movie and pop culture
and they're
references.
so good, though.
I think I wrote a list of most of the ones I saw.
And have you seen A Knight's Tale?
With Heath Ledger?
Yeah.
No, I've seen parts of it on TV, but never the full
Shrek
movie.
2 is what A Knight's Tale should have been.
Take that, everyone in A Knight's Tale.
Because in A Knight's Tale, there are some subtle references, but it doesn't... They're just references. They don't exist within the universe. I don't feel like. But in Shrek 2, there's the Farbucks.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even going to talk about that.
And they go into the one that's right across the street.
Right, they run from one to the other one. I didn't see that this time when it happened. I must have been writing something down.
And then there's the Burger King.
But as far as movie references, I wrote down there's Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, Hawaii Five-0, which I know is a TV show, Zorro, Marilyn Monroe, Alien, Mission Impossible, and Predator are all ones I caught in this run through.
Is Zorro just because Antonio Banderas?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that.
Well, the Puss in Boots, when he carves it into
the is the Zorro thing with a Z.
Lord of the Rings, when he gets the ring, it's that shot is a Lord of the Rings shot when the ring gets pulled
in
out
the beginning, in the very beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it has words on it. It says, I love you. Spider-Man, obviously, when he had the mud on his face and Fiona wiped it off and kissed him.
Yeah.
YFIVO, the dude with the trumpet. Marilyn Monroe is the scene where fairy godmother singing her song,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
Fiona's like, "Woo!" There's also first there's
Alien with Puss in Boots at
Yes.
the when. Yeah.
but also in that scene, I think there's a Predator reference. This one is more subtle.
Oh, when
is
Puss in
the
Boots.
tree
Yes.
and like he's purring. That to
Yes.
me was indicative of Predator hunting down
I
soldiers.
I
in that
agree with
movie.
that.
And then of course there's Mission Impossible when they broke him out.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm not wearing ladies' underwear.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Funky Town. I want to make note at the dinner. The first shot we see of the dinner is there's a huge like hawk, angry bird above Shrek, and I said that this is basically Shrek is the prey to this lavish life.
I can deal with that.
It's like rah!
I think that scene. I don't know if they have blocking in animated movies. I would assume they do. For those of you that don't know, blocking is basically like the setup of everything in the scene, props, characters, whatever.
And like movements that they make.
I think the blocking of this scene is immaculate because like you have Shrek. And
let me stop you right
Harold at like
there. The blocking of this
table.
entire movie is immaculate, Thomas.
Well, that scene in particular, as far as like being metaphorical,
I think that
and
sequence.
symbolic.
I think that sequence
Because you have like they're sitting at the table. Shrek and Harold are each at a head of the table, signifying that they are battling for the head of this family.
right.
And neither of them want the other one there. Fiona and her mom are in the middle of the table, signifying that they have middle ground. The one thing that's weird in this scene
Is Donkey.
Yeah, because he's sitting on the side of King Harold, isn't he?
Well, yes, but let me bring back to what I said earlier, is that Donkey doesn't count. Just because he exists very strangely.
That's still an odd choice to me. But maybe it's just because he, like you say, he doesn't belong.
Well,
But although Donkey in that scene, I think is hilarious because like Shrek drinks the water,
and Donkey's like, bro, what are you doing?
and like he's looking at him like, oh. And then like shortly after that, Donkey just like starts drinking all the water in the bowl.
Yeah.
Which also, when the chef's like, bon appetit, he's like, oh, Mexican food, my favorite.
Yeah. Which
I think that might be a little more extension on the last movie as far as like racial commentary and saying like how most people, or not most people, but a lot of people are like, it's not English.
Yeah. Well, let me just point out too that the food that Shrek eats versus the food that Harold eats. Like the first dish, Harold has a lobster,
Right.
and Shrek has, I assume, a turkey.
I don't remember.
It's a big bird.
I know they pull apart the pig.
It's a big bird, regardless. Well, and like I would say that the turkey is probably a lower class food, just because it's easier to get, and then a lobster, which technically at this time, if it's medieval, would actually be a poor person food because they're bottom feeders. But we know lobster to be fancy. Which,
on that class divide thing, there's a line Donkey has when they're up in the rooms. Donkey's like, you got a puppy? All I got was in my room was shampoo. And I wrote that now as possibly a commentary on a class divide. Because like Donkey would be lower class, and then Fiona would be upper class because she's a princess.
Well, the Bichon Frise is like a super expensive like purebred too.
Is that what the dog was?
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about the dog, I'm going to move into the Fairy Godmother song.
Yeah, I want to talk about that
Which, first of all, is a further deconstruction of the Disney princess movies because all of Disney movies have songs. And this is the only one that I can think of in the Shrek franchise where the character is actually singing an original song.
Yes. But Fiona's like, I have a fairy godmother?
Yeah, she didn't even know. Which is another reason why I think A, she was cursed, and B, this was all set up by her in the shadows.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think that this further talks about corporate, again, I don't know, the word propaganda, because the fairy godmother implies that all of her problems can disappear.
Right.
As long as you trust in me and give yourself to me, I can take care of it.
So it's not very long. I'm basically going to read the lyrics of the entire song because there's not really a lyric that gets repeated. She says, this is the fairy godmother singing to Fiona after the scene at the dinner table. She says, I know what every princess needs for her life to live happily.
Every princess needs
with just the wave of my magic wand, your troubles will soon be gone. With a flick of the wrist and just a flash, you'll land a prince with a ton of cash.
Flick of the wrist.
A high-priced dress made by mice no less. Some crystal glass pumps and no more stress. Worries will vanish, your soul will cleanse. Confide in your very own furniture friends. Will help you set a new fashion trend. And I'm going to stop there because
There's Bichon Frise in there. Look.
Well, I know later she says it in the
And then the
but I think the
man
point,
boy chauffeur Kyle.
But I think the point of this song is that fairy godmother is saying like, hey, you can be happy with all these material things,
Right.
and I can make your physical appearance look better. Because she also talks about tooth decay. So she, like Harold,
Wait, who has tooth decay?
Fiona.
Oh, well,
So
she's an ogre.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like in the song, she says, let me see if I can see it. Vanish your blemishes, tooth decay, cellulite thighs will fade away. So she's basically saying, like, you're ugly, but I can help you. So
she's magazines.
Like Harold, did not watch the first movie. She didn't get the message that I love myself, even though I look like a burnt chicken.
Let me just point out, I think that Fiona like studied the first movie.
She did, 100%. She watched it on repeat every night of their honeymoon.
Because I think she gets it. She's the only one that gets it.
Well, I think Shrek gets it to an extent, but Fiona definitely gets it more.
Right.
Because another theme in this movie, there's a line that's repeated a few times talking about how you will change for those you love. But if you really love someone the way they are,
they don't have to change.
Right. So I think that's like, people will argue if true love exists. I think that is an argument for true love.
Well, and we
if
see
you
this.
love someone enough to change for them, you are truly in love for them. But if they love you enough, truly, then they won't want you to change.
Well, and Fiona says this at the end, is like, Shrek's like, we can stay this way forever. And she's like, no, I want to be with the ogre I fell in love with.
Right. And then he tries to kiss her. But then she's like, no.
And then they turn back into ogres.
Yeah. And then the movie ends. The movie ends very abruptly, might I add. I don't think it's a bad ending.
Livin
but it was just like,
loca.
We're done. Which, speaking of that, the pacing in this movie, the whole movie is phenomenal. But the other day, I watched Scoob, the new Scooby-Doo movie that came out this year. And if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know
we are huge Scooby-Doo fans.
I love Scooby-Doo. And I did enjoy Scoob, but objectively, it is not a good movie.
I agree.
And I think that is largely due to the pacing in that movie. It's just like things happen and it's like da, 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 da. But in Shrek 2, everything makes sense, everything moves smoothly.
Well, not only is the pacing great, but the pacing fits the mood of what's happening.
Yeah.
Like I want to get to this since we're going to talk about it. Is the scene that I Need Some Sleep plays by the Eels, who did
one of the songs in the first movie,
the monster song, "I'm in Love with a Monster" or whatever.
When they're running around on their date, blowing up the frog.
Yes. And like this is a super slow scene, and like that kind of fits the mood. Because Shrek is now kind of like, he has a break from the insanity that happened earlier, and he's kind of thinking, he's being introspective, and the song and all that.
Right.
It just fits, the pacing fits the mood.
Well, and another thing, and I don't want to just bash on Scoob because I did enjoy it, but another thing is in that movie, I feel like they forgot that they were making an animated movie in parts.
Yeah.
Because like there's a scene when Fred, Velma, and Daphne are in the van, and like Fred says something, but Daphne and Velma don't react at all while he's talking. But then after he's done talking, then they make a face. But then in this movie, I'm going to point to the, really any scene where Donkey's in the background, he's always making some sort of facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
But then particularly in the prison scene with the blind mice that like falls down there.
The dungeon when they're the rescue.
The focus is not on the mice, it's on Shrek and everyone else. But throughout that scene, the mouse is just walking around in the background. So the animators in Shrek didn't forget any detail.
Right.
And I think that adds
and then Puss in Boots tries to eat one of the mice.
Right. And he throws it back up.
Back to the you just gotta let it go scene. I wanna make note that just like Harold, Shrek turned to the fairy godmother.
Yes.
Shrek turns to fairy godmother. And I think that this, like, my whole point is that corporate, like, greed or whatever, is that Fairy Godmother has this very, like, sinister way of attacking the men, specifically. The men who would do anything for their woman, and, like, using that as a way to manipulate the people to get what she wants. Corporation.
It's like we talked about in, I think it was Megamind. I don't remember. There's one episode where I talk about the women's seductress powers.
I think that's Megamind, yeah. With Roxanne's birthing hits.
Which, it's another DreamWorks movie. Everyone craps on DreamWorks, man. But I think it's like library-wise, Disney has a lot more movies. But I think
quantity does not mean quality.
Quality of content, arguably, in my opinion, most of the time DreamWorks, I'll take it over a Disney movie. Now,
absolutely.
I haven't seen Shark Tale in a while. I feel like that one's not very good.
But
even the ones that aren't very good, like the B movie,
they're still enjoyable to watch.
Movie, dog.
You know. All right, we're getting close to the end here. So let's see if we can wrap this up a little bit.
Dang, I feel like I got a lot more.
I know, me too. I mean, we can keep going. We can keep going, Thomas.
Let me see. I had a question about Dragon, but I don't remember what. Oh, okay. So when Shrek and Donkey drink the potion, their true love is also affected.
Yes. What does Dragon turn into?
Yeah. I was wondering that.
Which I want to point.
She's also pregnant.
She is
possibly in the middle of childbirth when this potion takes into effect.
Whoa. Okay. Just chew on that, listeners. Okay, I want to. Okay, so Fiona turns into Fiona from what she originally is, right? And Shrek turns into something.
And Donkey turns into a horse.
Right. My question is, does that mean that Shrek? Because the potion is beauty divine, as Antonio Banderas says it, which, I mean, we can imply means that they're going to look the best, right?
Yes.
So Fiona turns into what she already looked like. And then Shrek turns into the most handsome man. Does that mean that Shrek is the most handsome ogre?
Well, we don't know much about ogres in this.
As far as we're concerned, they're the only two ogres.
Right. Until the fourth movie, but that takes place in an alternate reality.
Right.
So,
I mean, in my opinion, Shrek's the most handsome ogre.
I'm shrugging my shoulders, listeners.
The last serious thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, unless you want to keep going, is one of the last songs that takes place, I think, when it's raining, after they drink the potion. I could be wrong, but this is after the fairy godmother is like, ogres don't get happy endings. And a song that plays when it's raining is Ever Fallen in Love. And I forget who it's by.
Yeah.
But one of the lyrics is, you shouldn't have fallen in love with me. You disturb my natural emotions. Is this the one you wanted to talk about?
Well, I looked up the lyrics for that song, but I mentioned some of it earlier because it's like, have you ever fallen in love with someone you shouldn't have fallen in love
right.
with?
Oh, okay. Make me feel like dirt, and I'm hurt. And if I start a commotion, I'll only end up losing you, and that's worse.
So, and this song to me speaks to the fact that Shrek is in love with Fiona. But as this was showcased in the first movie also, he feels like as an ogre, he doesn't deserve her.
Right.
And her parents have made him feel that way again.
And then Fairy Godmother pushes that hard too.
Yeah.
When he's back at the castle, and Shrek's like, Fiona! And he's banging on the window. And at this point, Shrek's like, no, I got to get back to her. But then shortly after that, Fairy Godmother's like, look how much happier she is. And then even as sexy as human Shrek is, he's still like, maybe she's better off without me. Because, as Donkey said, he's still that same old stinky, grumpy green ogre. So even though his outside has changed, like we've made note of so many times, he is still an ogre at the inside.
See, and what makes that scene hurt even more
Johnny Cash.
Is
Nine Inch Nails.
No. Is Fiona, right before Shrek was going to take the potion, Fiona was about to leave
Yes.
and go back to the swamp.
Yes, she was.
Because her parents not accepting her relationship with Shrek.
As an ogre.
She was like, I don't need to deal with this. We'll go back to the swamp where we belong.
Well, and then continuing in the same sequence, Fiona pretty much knows that isn't Shrek.
Yeah. No, like the whole time she's like, this is not the right guy. And then the dad, this may be the first time the line is said, but then the dad's like, well, people change for the ones they love. Which now that I'm saying that, maybe he was actually bad in the beginning, but because he loves Fiona, he changed for her.
Right. So maybe he didn't change for Lillian. Maybe he changed for Fiona.
Nope.
He changed for Lillian? Wait.
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh,
Whichever word that's correct in that instance.
Okay. Well, that's something. That's all I got in terms of meaning. I do have a few things I want to talk about outside of meaning. If you have something else you want.
Well, I mean, I don't have any more meaning things. I do. I have a question that I guess I'll go ahead and ask.
Okay.
Do you think that ogre is like the N word in this culture?
Yes.
Because like every time someone says ogre, everything stops and everyone's like,
yeah,
like especially in the Poison Apple.
Yeah,
like
the first time. Yeah,
or
well, when Harold was like, I have a contract,
and then he says,
"Who's the guy?" That was pretty good too. My impersonation has been pretty spot on this episode. We've got Antonio Banderas. For you, baby, I could be. And then the other sister, who's the guy? Come on, that's pretty good. I'm gonna do it again. Who's the guy?
All right,
I'm gonna do it again. That's so. Who's the guy? You try.
If you want to send a video of you kicking Jake in the face, I'll
send us your
retweet
best Shrek impersonations.
I'm an ogre. That's from this one. That's from this movie.
It is. Who's the guy? That's so good. Who's the guy?
But everyone responds to ogre like it's like the worst word they've ever heard. So I feel like it's not a word that gets tossed around a lot.
Well, they're also like super rare.
Ogres?
Yeah, as far as we know.
Well, because it could also be like a racial slur, and like that's not actually what their race is called.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. That's interesting. I did not think about that. Huh.
Big old greeny meanies.
Mean green lovin' machine. That's what Shrek is.
Yep.
We talked a lot about music, and there's also some really good like original score here. So at the last sequence with Mongo and all that, Thomas, what song plays? The same action song score that plays in Shrek 1 when he's running from the dragon. Did you catch that?
No, but there was earlier in the film, like I think it's when it's raining. This score plays that's reminiscent of like the sad time score in the first movie.
That's the Shrek theme.
But I don't remember.
That's the Shrek theme.
No. It's like when they're raining and it's all sad.
It's
not an actual song. It's instrumental. It's not the actual Shrek theme, but it's like real sad. And it's something I looked up in the first movie, but I don't remember what scene it was at.
But it exists in the first movie too.
Yeah.
It's interesting how there's only like 3 original songs, but they all like, dude, and the way that they like intertwine I Need a Hero with the action score, it's just
Yeah, that scene is
who's the guy?
It's a good scene.
Okay. There was one we already talked about her being pregnant. Do I have anything else?
Oh. Well, we didn't answer what we think she turned into.
Dragon?
Yeah.
Unicorn. Or like a griffin, maybe.
See, I was thinking like a lizard.
It's still a dragon. Yeah.
But would a lizard be more beautiful? I feel like dragons are already pretty beautiful.
Chameleon.
It's like maybe dragon's already like perfect and she didn't change at all.
She ascended. She turned into like pure energy.
And then she gave birth to 5 abominations.
Yes. Which, if we're going along with the theory that she was pregnant at the time, or she was giving birth, then did she birth orbs of light that maybe like got like messed up in the process to getting turned back? And that's why they're abominations?
They're just a hybrid babies.
Ugly babies. They're ogres, but not ogres.
I'm an ogre.
Ah, real smooth, Shrek. All right,
So you got?
that's all I got.
Okay. I feel like there was a good donkey quote from this movie that I haven't said.
I mean, there's a few good donkey quotes. Mexican food. We already said that one.
Yeah.
Oh, the carrots is an onion.
Okay.
Just,
Oh, and onions have layers.
yes, just like this movie and like ogres.
No, this movie doesn't have layers. It's got players. Oh, I wanted to talk about. Sorry, I know.
We keep talking. We keep saying it's over. We're almost there, guys.
But we got to talk about the night scene because they grind up a bunch of pepper
and
Shrek's
the
eyes.
cat and Puss in Boots has weed.
Oh, does he really?
Catnip,
Yeah. So they grind up pepper in his eyes, which is like pepper spray.
Right.
And then Donkey's like, police brutality! Which you probably know this. Donkey is played by Eddie Murphy, who is a black man. So I think that's commentary on police brutality, especially to the black communities. But it's also earlier in the film. The first thing Donkey says when he sees Puss, he says, "He got a piece!" So I think that's further like commentary on that, even though it's not in the movie very long and it is a joke. The fact that Donkey's character is the one that says it both those times, I think it's very poignant.
It is not mine. Who's the guy?
All right, I think you need to go to sleep.
Dude, that's so funny.
But it's okay.
Who's the guy?
All right, well, that's we did it. Shrektober Part 2.
Woo! Did we rate Shrek 1?
You said we didn't. I don't remember.
Well, let's go ahead and rate Shrek 1 because I forgot.
Did anything blow up in Shrek 1? I don't remember.
Nope.
I watched that so long ago.
It was like a week ago. I
It's
feel
too
like it's been
long.
forever. What's today? Today's Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it a week and a day ago, but I don't really.
Oh,
remember
same
anything that
here.
happened.
Saturday is for Shrek. I don't think we did. I don't think there was any explosions.
And Shrek, the first one.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's like the fireballs in the castle, and then Farquaad gets eat at the end.
He gets eat.
Yeah.
I might have to give it a 1, Thomas.
Shrek might drop an explosion in the toilet. There's a lot of flatulence.
In the first movie.
Yeah.
Which in this movie, when he drinks the potion, the what's that? I don't know what that technique is called, but basically they're moving from a wide to a zoom while staying in the same focal length, or the same distance.
I don't know.
But it does that, and then it like his tummy rumbles, and then he farts.
So if we're going on a flatulent explosion, Shrek's a 5 out of 5.
But
But
we're not.
nobody actually blows up, Ready or Not style, or just any other movie style. So
Shrek 1 gets a 1, and I'll give Shrek 2 a 1.5 because there is flames.
okay. Fairy Godmother turns into a bunch of bubbles,
She doesn't explode though. That's more like
but it's kind of like
that's a pop, Thomas. That's it. Nope.
spontaneously.
Nope. Don't say combust because it wasn't combustion.
No, I know.
Thomas, look at me.
Poor Mondo.
It's a 1.5, dude.
I gotta give it 2. I feel like I'm breaking the rules, but I gotta give it to 2 just because I love this movie, man.
You hurt me a little bit.
And she
All right.
turns into bubbles.
Bubbles,
Jake, bubbles.
So Shrek 1 is a 1. I think we can agree on that. Right, Thomas?
At the most.
At the most. And Shrek 2 is an average score of 1.75.
Man, I really hope that one of these movies has someone blowing up. If not, I'm gonna be really disappointed.
And there you have it, folks. That was episode 2 of Shrektober. If you've got any question, comments, if you think our scale is stupid and you think Shrek deserves higher or lower, let us know. Please, for the love of God, send us your best Shrek impersonations of any character in this movie. I would love it, and I can guarantee you they're not going to be better than mine. If you think they are, send them over.
Also, let us know what Dragon turned into. I really want to know what you guys think.
Talk to Mike Myers, talk to Cameron Diaz, talk to Eddie Murphy. Figure out if you can. Which,
speaking of those cast members, when I'm watching this movie or any of the Shrek movies, I completely forget that it's real people. And I'm just like, these are these characters.
I agree. So before we go, make sure hit us up on Twitter at PacinoPod. All right, and you can send us an email at pacinopodcast@gmail.com. And with that, folks, we will leave you with a
Stout sauerkraut.
stout and sauerkraut. Who's the guy?
More like sour crap.
Oh, Thomas. Who's the guy? Who's the? I can't see it.
Stop the podcast.